So
Yeah.
talk to me about that. How do you take the non-math geeks, right? The non-nerds
Mhm.
and make this fun?
So what's fun is making money. People are passionate about their businesses. You want to grow your business. Like you would much rather sit down with somebody and brainstorm all these changes and implementations and things that you can do to grow your business and change things and make this better. And that's where the true passion lies. And being able to use your numbers and do that is a tool that a lot of people don't use.
Hey guys, welcome to season 2 of the Next Step podcast. We are starting off with a bang because I know it's that time of year, y'all. I know it's the time of year when you're preparing for taxes and you may not feel 100% prepared. Well, fear not, because I have the best guest for you today. Her name is Jackie Easterday, and she is a certified public accountant. She has her bachelor's degree in finance from the University of Texas and a master's degree in accounting from Indiana University. She helps stressed out, overwhelmed business owners, shout out, get control of their finances, organize their books, and file their taxes without tears or frustration. She's been helping small business owners like you and me manage their books and file their taxes for over a decade. And her mission is to make small business accounting simple, approachable, easy, and yes, even fun, which as a math geek, a resident math geek, I love numbers. I love
Yeah.
bookkeeping, but I know that I'm weird. So it's okay. So like you and me connect there, Jackie.
I am so excited to be here. I just like you said, piggybacking right off that, I love talking numbers. I know it is not everybody's jam, but I think that it is such an imperative part of your business to understand and have a handle over. And if I can just make one person feel a little less anxious or uneasy about the number side of everything with one piece of advice, I feel like I've done a great, I'll be so happy today because it's such a part of our business. So many people bury their head in their sand, ignore it, don't want to deal with it. So hopefully we can kind of alleviate some anxiety, especially with impending tax season right upon us.
Well, and let's talk about that
Yes.
very thing,
Yes.
impending tax season. So let's go back and just talk about why bookkeeping is so incredibly crucial as we prepare for tax season. Like, what are the
Yep.
kinds of things people hear bookkeeping and they start to get intimidated? So, like, break it down. What is bookkeeping? Why is it important? And how does someone even get started?
All right. So bookkeeping is really an overarching, definition of just tracking all of your income and all of your expenses for your business. So what I mean by that is all the money that your clients are paying you, we need to be tracking that as your sales and your income. And then all the money that you're spending, whether you're paying contractors, software, all of your expenses, we need to track those because that is going to determine your overall business profit. That profit, if we're just talking taxes, that's the number you're taxed on. So bookkeeping is so important because we need to be tracking what we are taxed on. And there's several reasons for that. One is if you are tracking things throughout the year, you can start saving for taxes in real time and not be scrambling at tax season. Another big part of that is come tax season, if you have not been doing your bookkeeping throughout the year, you're going to be doing it all at once. And that is a nightmare. Nobody wants to spend their time doing that, but also it just leads into so much error. We're going to miss things. We're going to forget things. And if you can kind of break that up into the 12 months leading up to tax season, you're going to have much more accurate numbers on, when it comes tax time, hands down. So that's kind of, there's a million ways, not a million, but there are several ways that you can do bookkeeping for your business. I have a lot of clients that just start with a Google sheet or a spreadsheet, and they are just pulling their information in from their bank accounts. What were my deposits? What did people pay me? What were my expenses? And that is a great place to start. I think the beginning is just starting. Just start somewhere. So you can track it in a Google sheet or a spreadsheet. That's perfect. There are also a ton of CRMs that actually have built-in bookkeeping functions. They're not going to function like QuickBooks and Xero and give you, reporting that those actual accounting softwares will, but they will track things. So I know I have a lot of clients use HoneyBook to send out their contracts and things like that. You can actually go into HoneyBook and start like adding in all of your expenses. So pull those in from your bank statement, and then HoneyBook can start to generate a profit and loss for you. So that's another kind of step up from a Google Sheet. I would say the highest tier would be utilizing QuickBooks or Xero or another accounting software to truly track your books and, make things a really, really smooth transition for tax time. We love Zero at the Easterday group, or not Zero. Oh my gosh. We love QuickBooks at the Easterday group. But we have several clients at tax time that use Zero. It's just a matter of finding what jam kind of works for you and how everyone's brains work differently. So every kind of software works a little bit differently. But what an accounting software is going to do is it's going to connect directly to your bank accounts. It's going to pull in those bank transactions, which is going to alleviate a lot of that human error where you're inputting things onto a spreadsheet, right? It's going to make sure you're not missing transactions. And then you're going to go in there, you're going to classify, was this expense software? Was this a meal? Was this travel? Was this a contractor? And then it's going to generate really, really nice financial reports for you. And so there's several ways to kind of navigate through the bookkeeping process. It's just a matter of, I would say, starting. If you are intimidated, just start with a spreadsheet and then, migrate into some of these higher platforms and softwares. I have a lot of people come to me and they're terrified by QuickBooks, and they started it and they connected their bank and it freaked them out and it pulled in 900 transactions and they want to crawl under a rock. And that may not be the right move for you. Start with something simple that's going to work and then migrate down the road into something a little bit more complex that's going to give you more reporting. But it's like anything else, the first step is the hardest. So just find something that works for you and kind of go in that direction.
And I will say, so it's funny because you're right, like there's tiers, right? So you have just the Google spreadsheet.
Yep.
And like HoneyBook, I have HoneyBook and you can put your expenses in that, and I'll put a link for HoneyBook in the show notes, y'all. But the one that I use, because I used to use QuickBooks way back in the day. It is so much more complicated than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I don't need QuickBooks at that level. So I personally use YNAB, which is you need a budget. And it's great because you get that functionality of pulling the bank account information in automatically for you. But it's not giving you a balance sheet. It's not giving you a P&L. So you have to know how to do that stuff. But it is a great, it's like that intermediate step. And I'm not sure about Zero, but maybe Zero is that intermediary step. The other thing that you said, and I want to draw this to people's attention.
Yeah.
Talk about why they need separate bank accounts for business and personal and separate credit cards for business and personal.
Yes. So this ties right into bookkeeping, but it ties really well into just talking about preparing for taxes. The best thing you can do for your business, if you're starting your business, is open up separate bank accounts. If you haven't done it yet and you're 6 months, a year, 5 years into it, open them now. The reason is there's kind of twofold reasons here. One is that if you are an LLC, and I'm not giving legal advice, I'm not an attorney, but the main premise behind starting an LLC is to kind of separate your personal and your business assets. If you're using your personal card to pay for business expenses, you blur that line and you may lose some of that protection if something were to happen. So that's a big reason. Another big reason is bookkeeping. So if I had to go through my personal credit cards at the end of the year and skim every single transaction for that Adobe charge or that HoneyBook charge, or pull in that payment I know I made for that contractor, it would take me forever. First of all, I'd have to sit through a zillion Amazon transactions. But more so, if everything is pulled in and it's separate, everything on this credit card is related to your business. You don't have to sift through personal expenses. Same thing with your bank account. If you know this business bank account, you're just pulling in your income from your payment processor. Maybe you're using that as a debit card and you're paying your software charges and your website hosting fees and things like that through there. Then everything is in one spot. You're not commingling everything, and you're not having to sift through a zillion personal transactions. The two big things that I see people do is, one, not opening a personal, card or a business card, and they're just dumping it all into, or a business, they're just dumping it all into their personal, which again is super complicated. The other one I see is sometimes people, in lieu of paying themselves, they decide, hey, I'm going to put everything on my business Amex. And it's not a big deal. I'll just classify them all as personal. But instead of just paying themselves, a draw of $5,000 or $10,000, they do that instead. And I will tell you, sifting through that many transactions, you're going to miss something. You're going to miss a business expense and accidentally say it was personal. You're going to accidentally make a personal expense business. It's just going to happen. And so by keeping those separate, we eliminate even more room for human error and are able to generate even more accurate. It's the best way to generate the most accurate financial reports, which we want those to be accurate for a lot of reasons. But the core of that is we do not want to pay more in taxes than we need to. So if your books are overstated and showing more in income, you're paying more in taxes. Likewise, if you're underreporting, you could get dinged by the IRS. So that's the best way to make sure that those books are accurate for tax time. There's a million other reasons you want accurate books, but that's really, really what it boils down to. And that's what most people are concerned with, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, well, I love it. And you nailed that pitfall that I didn't even think of. Like it seems like people would use their personal to pay business. But yeah, I didn't think about people using their business card to pay
Yeah.
personal. It's like, no, 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 don't go there. Don't do it.
Yeah. Sometimes people do that, I find, because one, sometimes business cards have higher limits on them. And two, a lot of business cards have a little bit better rewards. And so people think, oh, I'm going to put this, and it starts small. Hey, I'm going to put this flight on there. I'm going to do this. And every once in a while, something's going to happen. I may accidentally use my business card in Amazon because you're toggling between the cards and you're going to make it, that stuff is going to happen. But that's so much easier to catch, is one or two transactions every couple months as opposed to several. That's where the error really just kind of starts to compound.
Yeah, gosh, I can imagine. Oh, I can totally imagine. After doing business for a long time, I can totally imagine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so let's kind of go back to those expenses, right? We all know
Yep.
what income is, deposits coming in.
Yep. Yep.
But when it comes to organizing our expenses, what are the main categories? Because I know that can be like, well,
Yeah.
what is this? I paid for my WordPress host, but then I also paid for a domain, but then I also paid
Yep.
for somebody to set it up. Like, how do we break our expenses down? How do
Yeah.
we categorize them simply?
So that is one of the biggest things I see too. I think that your books should be as complex that makes sense to you. If it gets to the point where you have sent 10 different sub accounts for a specific category, like you're not paying attention to that. So setting up your books needs to it's twofold. One, you want to make it so it's usable for you. So those categories are usable, and we'll kind of talk about that. But also, if it's so complex, you may not maintain it, and you may not maintain it accurately. So typically, when we set up clients' books, they have somewhere between maybe 10 and 20 or 30 expense accounts. It kind of just depends on the business they're in and things like that. The most common expense accounts are, number one, especially in the online space, is going to be software. All those Zoom, Adobe, HoneyBook, all of those software charges are, that is a business expense. You want to make sure you're writing all of those off. So that's a big one. Another one are contractors. So when you're paying somebody to, whether they're working on client work, you're hiring somebody to copyright your website designer, that expense is typically a contractor. As well as people within your business. If you hire a project manager or a VA or a CPA, those are contract expenses. So those would all kind of be classified under contractors, and there's nuances and things like that. But in general, this would be where I would start. Thinking about website expenses now, especially in the online space, we don't all have brick and mortar stores. Our websites are kind of our storefront. So we are spending more on websites. You're spending more on hosting fees. You have somebody that is tweaking your website every 6 months, and you're paying fees. Now, those could be contractors, or you could put them in website. IRS doesn't really care as long as you're reporting accurate numbers. So that's where you kind of go to this piece of what makes sense in your head. Do you want to know what you're investing in your website? Then put those in websites. If you want to see if you're paying people versus, companies and software, then kind of allocate it that way. So there's some gray areas there. Also, travel. So that business travel, if you are going to meet a client or you're going to a conference, your hotel, your Airbnb for that travel, your flights, that's another really common category is travel. Another one is professional development. So a lot of us right now, we have business coaches and we're in networking groups. And that's one where I see a lot of people kind of not know, is this even really deductible, or how should I classify this, or where does this go? And I think a professional development, it encompasses all of the things that you're doing to build your skill set as a business owner and grow and scale your business. So I think that deserves its own bucket. And then kind of just going through my advertising and marketing, that's a whole nother area. So, whether that is, and again, here's another example of that, kind of what makes sense to you. Do you want to put your email? Do you want to put Flowdesk and, ConvertKit and some of those things in advertising and marketing, or do you want to put them in software? Again, it doesn't totally matter as long as you're putting it somewhere and if it makes sense to you and you're consistent. So I would start with kind of those areas. And then as you know your business, and you'll be able to kind of identify, this doesn't really feel like it fits in a bucket, it deserves somewhere else. But I preach getting your numbers in order for tax time, but also you want to be able to review your numbers to grow and scale your business and make decisions. So you want those financials to also make sense to you. If you're just looking, you're like, I don't know what's that in advertising, it's just going up, it's not going to help. So you want to make sure you know what's going into those categories, and then it makes sense with the way your brain works and your business is structured. structured and functioning.
I think you just hit the nail right on the head because when we think bookkeeping, we think taxes, we think IRS,
Yes.
but what we don't think is strategically scaling. We need to be
Yep.
able to see where can I reallocate money? Where am I wasting money? If I say that I spent $1,000 on a Facebook ad over a period of 3 months and I did not get a single sale or a single new client,
Hmm.
I need to know that that was a Facebook ad and not advertising in general, where I was
Yes.
doing print marketing and like all the things.
Yes.
So I think that you really, that's just it, right? When we're talking all about not messy action, but strategic action,
Yes.
having books that allow you to make strategic decisions about where to allocate
Yep.
your money. Brilliant. Oh my
Yeah.
God. That was awesome.
And I think one of the big things there too is I see a lot of times if we bring on a new client, we start going through their books for the year. One of the two main areas that they are typically shocked in is contractors. You don't really realize how much you're investing back in people, but if you kind of start tracking that, seeing that, you can make real-time decisions. You know what? It's time to bring this in house. Like I know I can do it,
Mhm.
and so there's things you can, if you're staying on top of your books, you can make real-time corrections to things and course correct and adjust your spending, increase your prices, all these things in real time that are going to really move the needle for your business, as opposed to just waiting till year end and just kind of running and doing the things and not really have an idea of how that's really, really reflected in the numbers.
Yeah, well, and you just said it again, raising your prices. Everyone's like, well,
Yeah.
how do I know what to price something? Well, you have to price it so it's profitable. So if you're
Yeah.
spending this much to promote it and to grow it and the software on it, and then you underprice it by $100 less than that, you're losing
Yep.
money every time you make a sale. So,
Yep.
oh, so good, so good. All right,
Yeah.
so I mean, like, I feel like we have just nailed like so many things. I'm going to ask you some more more
Yeah.
advanced questions. Okay, so let's talk to the person who has a team, and we know that a lot of people are outsourcing contracting outside of the country,
Yep.
right? And so we know maybe we're in Mexico or India, and we're pulling people in from outside the
Yep.
country to do work for us. How is that, or is that different than paying someone that's US based when it comes to taxes and all those things?
So the main difference there, it's all contract labor because a lot of people are paying, whether it's directly to somebody outside of the US or they're using platforms like Upwork and things like that to find these contractors to kind of support them. It's all contract labor. No matter, you're paying US dollars, that's what's coming out of your bank account, that's what needs to be reported. The biggest difference is at the end of the year, if it is a US contractor, you need to report what you paid them to the IRS in their state on a 1099. That's really the biggest difference there, is identifying who you need to be reporting those payments to, because basically what the IRS says is they're trying their best to get a handle on how much money everybody has made throughout the year. But when we're all paying each other, and they can't do that. If an employee is being paid by an employer, that stuff's getting reported to the IRS through W-2s and monthly payroll reports and all of that. They have a handle on that. It's all of these business owners. They want to know how much money did I make from somebody else so they can make sure they tax me on that. And that's what a 1099 is you're telling the IRS, I paid this other business this amount of money. Make sure they report it and they pay their taxes on it. So that's what a 1099 is. And that burden falls on the business owner to submit those to their contractors. So that's the biggest difference between international versus kind of domestic contractors, is make sure you stay on top of your reporting requirements for 1099s.
Got you, got you. So yeah, I mean, that makes sense. So you wouldn't be giving a 1099 to somebody that you hired through Upwork that's a foreign country or anything like that.
Right, right.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's good to know. Okay, so any other tips with regards to preparing for taxes? So as we're shifting from bookkeeping into
Yep.
taxes, let's start. We'll go two ways. Let's start with the business owner that can't really afford to hire a CPA to do it for them and probably doesn't need to. Like their business is
Yeah.
small enough that they can handle it.
Yep.
Versus, how do we know when we've crossed that threshold of like, ooh, we need professional eyes on this because number one,
Yep.
we might be missing out on tax breaks, and but number two,
Yeah.
there's a lot of details that we don't know and we don't want to get them wrong. So how do we know
Yes.
when to switch?
So there are a couple different reasons of why people would kind of migrate over to using a CPA. One is just straight up, they don't want to do it. They're too nervous, they're too anxious, or they just don't have the time and they want somebody else to do it for them. And they want to know it's done correctly. The other is you get to a point in your business where you really could start capitalizing off of some of these non-cash type deductions, like a home office deduction. What that is you're not going to see that hit your bank account. That's not something that you're going to be tracking on your spreadsheet based on your bank statement. That is, you can get a deduction for a portion of your home and all the expenses throughout the year that you use for your home office. So your mortgage interest, your property taxes, your electric bill, all of that stuff, you can take, maybe it's 5 or 10% of that as a deduction on your tax return. There's a lot of complicated calculations that go into that. And a lot of people attempt that and then just say, forget it, not going there, not doing it. It makes me nervous. But there's some tax savings you're leaving on the table. The same thing kind of goes with mileage. If you are traveling, outside, you're going to meet a client or you're driving to a conference or you're a photographer and you are traveling to all these shoots from your home, all of that mileage is deductible, but you have to know when it's deductible. It's not always deductible, and you have to know how to deduct it. And so that's another one where I see a lot of people just kind of throw their hands up in the air. And they're like, I didn't track it this year. I'm overwhelmed. It feels like a lot. I just don't want to mess with it. But again, huge tax savings you could potentially be leaving on the table. So there gets a point in your business where you are making enough money and you're doing enough, you're traveling more, things like that, where typically a lot of times when you work with, whether it's a CPA or an accountant or an enrolled agent or somebody, a professional to prepare your returns, that you're actually probably going to recoup the cost of that person through all of these additional savings, if not more. And just gives you that added kind of, okay, I know someone else has looked at this and they, because it can get complex if you are trying to, figure out, and I made light of, it doesn't matter what bucket it goes in. That is overwhelming for a lot of business owners just to know, like, hey, did I put this in the right spot? And so I think that when you get to that point in your business where you are just completely overwhelmed and you do think some of these other deductions may be applying to you, that's probably the right time to start, reaching out and looking to work with somebody else to make sure you're taking those correctly. There's also a lot of misinformation out there on how to save on taxes, and you want to be working with somebody who knows when it's applicable to you and when it's not, so you don't kind of get yourself caught in a situation where you may have taken a big credit that you shouldn't have taken. So I think when you start thinking about really lowering your tax bill, you're thinking about tax saving strategy and, hey, I made, a certain amount last year and I don't want to pay that again, that's when it's time to probably reach out to a third party.
And I think too, one of the things that I'll just say this because I did for a short time, I was a VA for an accountant. And
Yeah.
she was like, oh my gosh, people need to stop going to TikTok to get their accounting advice. Like, no, you cannot actually buy that and write it off. Like that does not
Yeah.
count as a legal expense just because you used your business credit card to do it. And so I think that is where when people realize that they need advice and they're going to not professional resources
Yes.
to get that advice, red flag, y'all. You need to hire somebody. Like
Yeah.
invest the money in somebody who legally knows what they're talking about.
Yes.
And then, and to some extent, my husband and I paid an accountant for years to do his business taxes. And even though we were required to say, yes, we've given you all of the correct
Yep.
information, in the end of the day, we knew that legally he had to report our taxes correctly. And if there was a problem, hey, IRS sent us a letter and they're getting funny about our whatever. Can you tell me how to respond to this?
Mm-hmm.
And then he would tell me how to respond. So there was this level of like, he did our taxes, but then throughout the year, if there was trouble
Yep.
or if there were red flags, we just contacted him and he's like, no, here's how we took care of it. Here's how it's legal. This is what you say back. Bam,
Yep.
done.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you that. Yes. At the end of the day, you're the one signing your return. You're the one approving it. You are the taxpayer. They are not. But you have this person to contact. Like, yes, hey, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of notifications that people get. I would say 90% of them are not accurate. They're just with a miscommunication, something didn't hit, like a form didn't hit by the time they sent out their notification. Like there's just so many different things, and it can be really overwhelming to get that letter in the mail from the IRS or from your state. You open it, you're like, oh my God, I owe $3,000. Like what happened? Someone did something wrong, and you just start to panic. And more often than not, it's an error on whether it's, especially now that the IRS and states are automating all of these things. There are so many times that just things aren't lining up, things aren't perfect. And if you're working with somebody and they're like, no, I wouldn't take, this deduction if I didn't have the support from you that we were eligible to take it, they've got it. They can kind of walk you through that process. So it is. I mean, there's that other assurance that you're doing things correctly.
Yeah. That
And you're
confidence.
covering.
It's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last tax return notice we got was saying that we didn't say that somebody was over 65 in our house. And I was like, but we don't have anyone over 65 in our house. I went back to my accountant. He's like, nope. They're out of they're crazy. This is how you respond. It was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah. There are some interesting ones that hit. I'm like, no, I don't know. We just say no, that's
like
not us.
With all of it being automated now, there's
Yeah.
going to be glitches. I mean, think of all the people that are filing taxes online these
Yeah.
days. There's going to be glitches. So, all
Yeah.
right. So here's what I want to talk about next because I introduced you by saying that you
Yes.
want to make bookkeeping and finances fun. So
Yeah.
talk to me about that. How do you take the non-math geeks, right? The non-nerds
Mhm.
and make this fun or at least not miserable?
Yeah. So what's fun is making money, in my opinion. I mean, people want to, and it's not just making money. I mean, I'm being facetious, but it's people are passionate about their businesses. You want to grow your business. Like you would much rather sit down with somebody and brainstorm all these changes and implementations and things that you can do to grow your business and change things and make this better. And that's where the true passion lies. And being able to use your numbers and do that is a tool that a lot of people don't use. So I think one of the most fun things that we don't do it with all of our clients, but we do these year-end projections where we look at the year and we map out what the next year is going to be. And these calls can be 2 to 3 hours long. And that sounds so painful until you jump on them. And it's fun because they're like, okay, oh my gosh, well, what if I did this? How could I price this? How could I afford this? And then people, a lot of times that they look at this and they're like, okay, so I really could bring on this VA to help me if all I need to do is book one more retainer a month or something like that. And so I think it gives using your numbers to grow your business and kind of map out what your goals and your game plan are. That's fun. That's a side of it that people enjoy doing. You just have to have numbers to start from. You've got to have a starting point to be able to use those and grow your business. And that's where bookkeeping comes into play because now we can pull up all your historical numbers and have some starting place. We could all throw numbers on a piece of paper and say, this is what I want to happen. But if you don't have some sort of guidelines and framework, there's a high likelihood that's not going to happen. Like there's got to be some sort of basis behind it. And so that's the fun part, I think. And that's my favorite part of working with my clients is not just doing the bookkeeping, and it's developing a partnership with them to really grow and scale and empower them to make these changes in their business in whatever way they're looking to do. So I think that's the really fun side of it.
I love that you're saying that again, because as an online business manager, I do a lot of strategizing with my clients.
Yeah.
Every month we do strategy, but I will tell you, I don't ask them to give me their actual numbers because
Yeah.
I feel like that is it. Not that I would, break confidentiality, but because there is a comfort level there where I'm
Yeah.
like, I give me percentages. Percentage wise, what was the profit? Percentage wise, what was it? I don't want
Yeah.
to know the details of your numbers because that's just a whole different level
It
there.
is.
And so what an opportunity to say, I want to talk about my numbers with somebody specifically. And then, we contact Jackie and we get into the
Yeah.
numbers with Jackie. And then we take that back and say, okay, Allison, based on the conversation I had with my accountant, this is what she said I can do. And this is what, oh,
Yep.
great. Let's implement that. So I love that you provide that service where truth be told, I'm very uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable with numbers, but I don't want
Yeah.
to have that conversation with my clients.
Well, I think the number side of your business is probably the most vulnerable side of your business. I find, one of our monthly packages, we have calls with our clients every month. And half of the time these calls, it's not really, but I kind of joke they turn into kind of a therapy session because these people are showing us the most vulnerable side of their business and they're being very, very transparent. And so that comfort level and trust really builds. And then they're running new product offerings and things like that behind us. And so to me, I think that's so important is to find somebody that you trust and you're going to jive with because there can be so much uncomfortableness and contention if you just kind of pick an accountant and you don't feel like you're meshing with them. You really, really want to find somebody that you feel like their style and their vibe is somewhere that you can be transparent with because that's where the growth happens. When you can really open up, then like you said, now you've got numbers you can take to your, operations team that you can start saying, okay, well, this is what I want to implement. I want to hire this person. You can go to, a hiring manager. You've now got some data behind this by really kind of opening up and kind of, pulling back all those layers.
And you've removed so much fear about moving
Yeah.
forward and there's always a level of risk, right? We can never guarantee that
Yep.
there's going to be income in 3 months. But if we know projected income is,
Yeah.
I can make these moves now, knowing I'll be able to cover it and avoid
Yep.
debt and all the things. So, oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. Well,
Yeah.
before we close this up, tell everyone where they can
Yeah.
find you. And I know that
Yeah.
you gave me a link to share with some free resources. So tell me about those free resources that everyone can
Yeah.
get their hands on.
Yeah. So our website is my, favorite in the world. I feel like it tells you a lot about who we are. It really encompasses a lot about our our vibe as a company. We are professional. I'm a CPA. I have experience doing taxes, but like I said, I want people I want to be approachable. So I think getting to know us and our company, the website is a great spot, but we are all over Instagram. So check out, we're posting, goofy memes, but also, relevant tax topics, accounting topics, tips, things like that. And freebies. So these are one of my favorite things. So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, just start somewhere. We have one of the freebies is an income and expense tracker, and it's a Google sheet that you can use to start importing, your monthly sales, your expenses. You can categorize them, and it's going to help you kind of generate a profit and loss statement each month. The really, really, really good starting out place before you get to that point where you're ready to kind of, invest and move into accounting software like QuickBooks or Xero or something like that. So that's one that I really love. Another one is this kind of goes into the fun side of everything. I have a quarterly income and expense or quarterly income calculator where you can really look at like what your numbers were this last quarter, tweak a little bit on pricing, sell a little bit more, and then see what could happen for the next quarter. And I think, it's a very basic kind of little template, but it's really, really beneficial to give you a game plan to know like, okay, if I just adjust my prices by 5% and sold one more of this, like look at what my profits could do or my sales. And so I think that's the piece where it makes numbers fun. Take what your current prices are and what you're current selling and kind of see what could happen. And so that's one of those that if you're looking to see why numbers can be fun, that's a little tiny piece of being able to kind of map things out and have a good game plan rolling into the next quarter.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I totally love that. And of course, the link for having a discovery call with you.
Yes.
You talk about actually working with you. One, to
Yeah.
get, do you retroactively help with bookkeeping? Do you go back
Yep.
and say, okay,
Yep.
let's fix all.
So we have our main core service that is my favorite is monthly accounting. We have several different packages, and this is where you're gonna hand your bookkeeping over to us. We're gonna do your books, we're gonna give you reports, we're gonna be that ear for you, throughout the year. We have tax services. We work mostly with our monthly clients because that's where the magic happens is if we're working with you throughout the year, taxes are so easy and we can course correct throughout the year. Like I was talking about, like, hey, let's reel it in on spending or things like that. But we do have tax spots every year that we open up to just tax, one-time only clients. So that's always there as well. But when we bring on a new client for the year, so, if we were bringing somebody on last year in November, we are going to own their books, if you will, for the year. So we're going to go back and get everything cleaned up for the current year, which helps with tax time because then as we roll into 2023 taxes, I know like, hey, we've cleaned everything. We've touched everything. We're all good. If people ever come to us and they're like, I haven't filed my taxes since 2022 or 2021 and I haven't touched anything, yes, we will do one-time QuickBooks cleanups and things like that and hopefully give you tips and tricks that you can maintain things. But yeah, we will retroactively get in there, clean up things. And I always tell everybody, like, everyone thinks their books are the messiest thing in the world, but this is what we do. It's kind of like when you walk into, it's just that it's the comfort of walking into somebody who knows that area. And we have seen so much messier than anything you could bring, I can almost guarantee you. So I think that's a big step that people, it's a big thing that they hold back. Like, I want to work with an accountant, but I need to get things in order first. You don't have to do that.
Right.
Just start. I think like I've said it, I think several different times in so many different areas, but just start somewhere. And then from there, fine tune it and perfect it and make it work a little bit better. But just take that first step, whether it's outsourcing to somebody, starting it on your own, that kind of thing. But just take that first step. It's going to start to alleviate some anxiety around that. And the more, you start taking little steps, you're eventually gonna, take control of that side of your business.
Fantastic. So the first step is get started. Second step is make
Yep.
sure that we're separating business and personal.
Yes.
The next step is knowing it is time to hire a professional because
Yes.
the nuances are beyond you. So,
Yep.
oh my gosh, Jackie, this was like
Yep.
you talk fast, which I appreciated.
There's
So,
so much to go through.
you just gave
Yeah.
so much value. Y'all listen to the episode again and then
Yeah.
maybe a third time so that you can get all the notes. And all the links will be below in the show notes. Thank you, Jackie, so much. Everybody go out there and make a plan, take action.